Please.
Okay.
Still don't want money.
Okay, the way I like to do this is to just ask one question of the panel myself to sort of warm them up, and then I will get all the questions from the audience, so this is your chance to ask them anything you want, really put them on the spot.
Not anything you want.
But,
You can ask whatever you want, but we might not answer it.
we're going to have to see what happens. First of all, one thing I love about the actresses on this panel, and there's a lot that I love, but I'll just single one thing out, is that they've all played incredibly strong women. So I was going to highlight one of each of their roles and ask them to talk about it. And I was going to start by asking you, Laura, about playing the mistress of the plantation in Django Unchained because of all the power attributed to the woman of the house.
Well, what part of it would I like to share with you? What would we like to know? I guess one thing everybody asks is, what was it like to work with Quentin Tarantino, and what was it like to work with Leonardo DiCaprio? So I'll go ahead and answer that because I figure that's something people want to know. Quentin is, I've done 4, I think, movies with Quentin, and one of them was Kill Bill that you all may or may not have heard of, I'm sure. But yes, he is totally unique in the universe as a director. And one of my favorite things about working with him is that, first of all, you know in advance that the script's going to be good. And you know in advance that the cast is going to be amazing. And you know in advance that it's going to be a lot of work and a lot of fun. And one thing he does that nobody else that I've worked with does is that in between every setup, he has the sound booth play music. And we all dance and sing and get loosened up and have fun instead of being like bored and waiting and, you know, knitting, yes. So that's one thing I really enjoy about working with him, but probably the biggest thing is his enthusiasm for movies is unparalleled. I think the only person that comes in the territory would be Martin Scorsese, who I have not yet worked with, but tell a friend and maybe I will. But yes, his love for movies is only matched by one other thing, which is his love for movie lovers. He loves movie lovers. He loves the audience, and he is trying so hard to deliver for you. And so that's a really neat experience to have that attitude of this is about the audience. This is not about us. It's about the audience. And Leonardo DiCaprio has a unique and rare, like encyclopedic jukebox knowledge of all music of all time, and sings songs from the 1800s, the early 1900s, the 1960s, the 1970s. I mean, he knows all the words to all the songs of all the songs ever written. And he sings all day.
Oh, I'm so interested.
Yeah.
Yeah, he sang a snippet, right, of Behind the Green Door in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood,
Yes.
didn't he? Yeah.
And he probably just already knew the words.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, he knows all the words to all the songs.
All right, Linda, I guess we're going to have to ask you about Ms. Tara King.
I don't know why you wouldn't.
Yeah.
I almost remember.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
it's
it.
your turn. Yeah, about strong women you've played. Yeah.
I thought there was going to be more direction in that.
Right?
So Tara King, so let me just say, I was really a baby. I was chosen from 200 actresses. I was not even threatened by taking over from Diana Rigg because I'd never seen the show. I didn't have a television. I had gone from Toronto to London on a scholarship, went to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, and it was the second thing I did out of the Academy. The first thing was I was asked by John Huston to go and see him because he was casting a movie called Sinful Davy, and he'd come and seen some shows we did, and he thought I'd be wonderful in it. And then he took me out to dinner. I was a vegetarian. He took me to a restaurant and bought me a steak, and I just got very high on that. I remember I was 17, and then he cast John Hurt in the movie. So he took me to dinner again, and he said, I need to tell you, you're too tall for him. And I said, well, what about Vanessa Redgrave? And he said, no, you're too tall for John Hurt. So and he cast this lovely actress, Pamela Franklin, and made the movie. But he said, I'm going to do something. This actress called Diana Rigg is leaving a series called The Avengers, so I'm going to introduce you to the producers because they need someone to take over. So I rang, great cost, my friends and my mother in Toronto, and I said, I'm going to get cast. I'm, not doing this big movie, but I'm going to get cast in this TV series, which I've never seen, but it's very popular. So anyway, I went along to see them, because I was going to do this TV series, and there were 200 other actresses there.
Oh.
And so I went from 200 to 50, 50 to 25, 25 to 8, and then 3. Mary Peach, Tracy Reed, and myself. I was 20. Mary was 30 and Tracy was 40. No, the other way around. Tracy was 30. But anyway, and they screen tested us all. In the end, and I got this wonderful role, which was amazing. To start your career doing an iconic series and to have Pat McNee take you under his wing. And I learned so much from him. I stayed on the set. I never went to my dressing room. I learned about lighting and camera lenses. And that was the beginning. And I had 33 hours of footage filmed on television, which is more than Elizabeth Taylor in her whole life by the time I was 22. So what that is, and it is 80% luck and 20% talent, and I still believe that, even after all this time, and tenacity. So that's how I started, and I got to create this wonderful character and be in love with John Steed and decide to be Miss Tara King, not Mrs. like the others. So, come on, what up? So that's how it all began.
Cool. I know, Melissa, you've played a lot of strong women, but the one I really want to focus on, the one I'd like to ask you about is the teenage girl who has to raise her 2 younger brothers in Sylvester, because I really love that movie. It was with Tim Hunter, who's a wonderful director who went into his dark side. I mean, that was kind of a dark movie, and his next one was even darker, the one he did with Crispin Glover. But if you could talk about that, I love that movie, and I love you in it.
I love that that's the one you want to talk about, because Constance was in it with me.
Yes, I know. Yeah,
She played, her character's name was Muffy Hyde.
Yes.
I'd forgotten the name.
It was a really interesting name, isn't it? Muffy Hyde. I actually, the process for getting that role was really intense. It was one of those situations where they had all the young women from all across the land, that came, and there were thousands and thousands, and they whittled it down, and it came down to me and another young woman, I think it was Leah Thompson, actually, that screen tested, and then they went back out again. They sort of weren't happy with either of us, and they went back out searching through far and wide across the universe, and came back finally to me, and I got the offer, and my first thought was, did they really want me though? How am I just the default?
Right.
And actually, Tim and I had a very we butted heads a lot in the beginning, because he actually sat me down on the first day, and at the time I found this very traumatic, but in hindsight, now I can see the honesty in it. He said, "Listen, you weren't my choice, but the studio wants you, and the producers want you, and we're going to work really hard to make this work." And my immediate thoughts were, why am I even here? But the more we talked, and the more we talked about the role and what we were going to do, and he said, I really want to see you come out of your comfort zone, and I really want to see you stretch and grow. He said, and we're going to cut all that hair off, which, for me was wildly traumatic. It still is. My hair is down to here. But I did it, and it ended up being a really extraordinary experience. And I had to train, actually. I did a great deal of my own writing and quite a bit of my own stunts, not in Lexington, where we did a lot of the eventing. Actually, we built shorter fences, so I did learn how to do cross-country jumping in and out of shadows, in and out of water, steeplechase, stadium jumping, and then I had to learn the cowboy stuff. I had to learn how to herd goats and cattle, and I had to learn how to get bucked or reared off a horse, how to ride a bucking horse, and how to do a horse-to-horse transfer on a highway, which I did, next to a camera car that was going 35 miles an hour. I went from one horse to the other. I was 20 years old. I can't imagine, well, I mean, I can't. Now, maybe a rocking horse to a rocking horse. But I had this great sense of accomplishment every time I did something like that. The secret, though, behind the scenes thing was, bless him, Tim Hunter was not a horseman. So he picked a horse that looked the way he wanted it to look. This was a 17.2 hand-high horse. I'm not tall. And I was teeny tiny then. And I looked like a pea sitting on this horse's back. My legs barely came down, and the horse had never been trained. So we trained together, but the horse had a habit of trying to run me off of his back. So he would just take off for the trees. And I learned pretty quickly how to drop a rein and grab a rein with both hands and pull him into my knee. And then the stuntmen started having catch horses. So there would be stuntmen out in a field in case the horse took off with me, so I could just ride to them and they would stop him. Which, in hindsight, is sort of not what you want to be doing with the lead in your movie. Because, ouch. But I had a really great time. It was my first time away on location by myself ever, and I was gone for 4 months. I loved the cast that we worked with. I, of course, please, this woman. And Richard Farnsworth.
I love Farnsworth.
He was the best. He really was a warm, funny, wonderful guy. I'll tell you one story, and then I'm going to let someone else talk. We shot the scene. There was a scene with an attempted rape, actually, where I get jumped in the cab of my truck, and then he comes running down the stairs and pulls the guy off me and punches him. So as soon as he got him off me, I was to get up, start the engine in the pickup truck, and drive away. And I sat up, and everything was really quiet, and nobody was moving. And I looked out, and the whole crew was being really still, and everybody was really silent, didn't know what to do. Apparently, what had happened was Richard pulled the guy off me and threw the punch. His dentures went flying. So we're all standing there. It's like I'm sitting, and we're all looking. I don't know what the heck's going on. And Richard goes, well, picks him up, pops him in his mouth, and goes, my God darn teeth fell out. Let's do it again. And that was sort of the tone for the whole movie.
Oh boy! All right, Constance. I think you know the movie I'm going to ask you about. Well, it's my absolute favorite of yours. It's The Naked Kiss, and if anyone hasn't seen it, I got to tell you, run out and see this movie. In this movie, she deals out 3 beatdowns, 2 of them to men who are trying to tell her what's what. But my favorite is the one in the middle of the movie that you hand out to the madam for exploiting other women, where you shove the money in her mouth. I mean, really, it's the kind of scene Schwarzenegger did 1,000,000 times in the 80s, but you did it first. I love that movie, that character. Oh, if you have anything you want to tell us about The Naked Kiss, I think everyone would love to hear it.
Well, shoving the money in poor Virginia Gray's mouth. She still spoke to me after the movie, but every time she saw me, she would go, and I was green enough that when the director told me, he said, I want you to make it really realistic and really shove the money in her mouth, so I did. And poor Virginia didn't know that was coming. So the fact that we stayed friends after that was it was a test of Virginia's largesse with me. But it was an incredible movie to make because it was before its time. And even the opening scene where I was bald and I was a prostitute and beating up the procurer, or as they called them, the pimp. And I was beating this man up, and it was all shot on a separate camera. So the cameraman had it on his shoulder, and they'd only done this several times before that, so it was very innovative and extremely effective. And there's a wonderful television show that I happen to watch and love, is The Young Sheldon. And I get paychecks from them because young Sheldon and his grandmother, Annie Potts, were caught looking at this film, and I realized what it was, and it was me beating up the pimp. So I've been on The Young Sheldon. So that it follows me everywhere I go. Anyway, so that was my experience with it, but it was wonderful. And it was very challenging, and the film was before its time. It attacked certainly a subject that today has become a buzzword, which is certainly child abuse, and nobody talked about it then. They whispered about it, but they didn't talk about it. So Sam Fuller was very courageous in the fact that he had the foresight and the challenge of the future, and he had the courage to tell that story in that film. So it was fun to be a part of it.
And he gave you those great opening credits where you're changing your look before you go to this tight close-up on you, and you just control the whole moment. It was a wonderful movie. I love it
I'm
so
so glad
much.
you
Oh,
liked
yeah.
it.
Oh, no, I've seen it several times. It's a great one. It really holds up. It's a great movie. All right. Mindy?
Yes, this great beauty. Yes, I'm up here with all these beauties and Mindy.
Well, thank you.
Oh no, it's I love me. Don't, yeah. Oh no.
Oh, hanging it. How I got to ask, because I always loved Charlotte Rae. Was she fun to work with, or was she tough?
She was a kick in the pants. No, it really was the best acting class ever. I was very lucky enough to have this mentor group of women 40 years my senior. There was Ruth Gordon and Geraldine Page and Charlotte and Bea Arthur and Betty White and Elaine Stritch.
Whoa.
Come on. Don't ask me.
I can't.
Don't ask me. They looked at me and we became what we called ourselves the Coven. And I don't know why they felt that I was their contemporary. I should have some insecurity around that because I was 14. But I'll tell you, what was wonderful is I think people, when they think about Facts of Life and Charlotte and the girls, they think she was this caretaker. We took care of her. She really made it that we were all co-stars, and she treated us with such respect, but also looked out for us, very much so. And I have to say a tip of the hat, since we just celebrated his 100th birthday together. Norman Lear, one of the first things he said to us sitting down was, look, girls, this is what you do, not who you are. And for some reason that has really stuck with me as one of the pearls of my necklace that I wear about my acting career, so that we all treated it as work. So even though we had a blast and we grew up together, it was a job. And so we didn't take it home with us, we didn't take it out there in the world with us. And I think out of all the other Norman Lear shows, and I don't know if you all know I don't want to call them horror stories, but difficulties young people have had. The four of us were not your stereotypical child actresses. We all had great families. We all are still very close. We're all very well-adjusted women. And so I don't think it was just luck of the Irish. I think it was a lot to do with Norman Lear and Charlotte Rae.
Oh.
Yeah.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah, it is. It really is. Yeah. And we miss her.
Yeah, my son goes to Emerson College, where they have a huge statue of
Okay.
Norman Lear
Yes, they do.
outside of his dormitory.
Yes, they do.
All right, we're now gonna give the right and left sides of the room chances to ask questions. I don't have a preference, so whichever side gets a hand up first, I will start with them. I'll start with the left side, right? Yeah. Okay, ma'am.
What do you like most about being an actress? All of you.
All of me, okay. What do you like best about being an actress? Who wants to start?
Go, man.
Oh, they're all
yeah.
looking at me.
Yes, we are. We're looking to guys.
Well, I think the fact that you get to be, or you get to tell stories that are wonderful, important, and sometimes change lives. I think it's a great experience and a great privilege to be an actress. And you have your choice of the stories that you want to tell, the ones you don't want to tell, but you can become someone else and experience so many different emotions and share them with the world. So it's very special, and you get to meet wonderful people, like being here. Every one of you are just terrific. And you come up and you hear interesting stories, the fact that you may have had a chance to touch someone's life in a very special way with something that you've done, that's a great privilege. And you've all shared those stories, so thank you for being here and for being an audience, which makes our job so wonderful.
Yeah.
I think the best thing about being an actor is the overall blessing to know what you want to do in life. And so since our queen just died, I'll just quickly share the fact that my first big memory was my dad in Toronto made a little 11-inch screen television. He was a carpenter in the basement, right, the tubes in the back, and we watched the coronation. So I was 5 years old, and I saw the Queen's coronation, and I immediately had the phoniest British accent you've ever heard. And my mother was the head of the Cancer Society, and I used to go into her cocktail parties, her fundraisers, and stand on a little stool and sort of say, my husband and I are terribly pleased to have come here and to represent you all as the king and queen. And then I used to tell my sister, we shared a room together, stories about how they ever went to the bathroom with all those huge gowns they got, how they ever got it, and my sister be hysterical laughing. But that is the best thing about being an actor, is that you know from a young age, I did, what you want to do with your life, and you get to earn a living, which I have for my whole life, taking every job, raising my son alone, doing something I like doing. And I've done a lot of theater, and I recommend everybody, no matter what else they do, if they can, to do theater, because the theater's not so cruel as you get older. They keep having you back. But for me, to have that chance in life, and I know a lot of people don't, because we all have to make a living, to earn your living doing the thing you love, that's been the blessing. Thank you.
I think for me, the best part of being an actor is I remember at some point somebody explained to me that the way they train the Dalai Lama is that they attempt to have him walk a mile in everyone's shoes to develop compassion. And I thought, that's what I do. I get to walk a mile in all these shoes that I have no other experience of, you know, whether they're strippers or slave owners or whatever they are, murderers, you know. I've played a lot of different kinds of characters, good and bad. You know, that I would not have any experience of these lives, and I've had to ask myself not just why would they do this or why would they do that, but why would I make these choices? How could I have ended up in this situation? And really develop the compassion for people who make different choices than I do and come from a different background than I do. And that has been such a gift, because it's such a heart-opening experience to dare yourself to not just live in your own mind and your own heart and your own experience. So for me, that's the gift of acting, is the gift of compassion.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Well, I'll say ditto. I just love being a storyteller, but the best part I think about this career and being an actor is that every job is new, that as I've aged, the roles have only gotten better and more juicy, and I'm just more talented, and I'm braver And I've just worked with the most incredible people, and I keep learning, and so it's that humility and that lesson, not to get too crafty and bore you all to tears, but, to sort of master that, have access to all my emotions, but not be a slave to any of them. So to be really creative and then sane at the same time, I just love the newness of it all the time. I love surprising myself. I love surprising other people. And I love being underestimated. It's my most favorite thing. And so honestly, to me, I really can say honestly, the best is yet to come. And to feel that way about a career or a life's work is quite liberating, quite exciting, and very grateful.
Wonderful.
I am blown away by the eloquence and the way each one of these women has described the process and the joys of being able to earn a living doing something that we love. And I really don't have anything to add other than to say I've had a really long and extraordinary career, but one of the really fun things is I've gotten to kiss a lot of really handsome guys. Sometimes, and to be really honest, sometimes that can be wonderful, and sometimes it's not so awful. It depends on the dude. And the Tic Tacs.
Okay, on the right side of the room, yes, sir.
Melissa, I've always wanted to ask her, my wife and I've met her a few times, and I always forget to ask her, what was Michael like?
There it is. It's a question I actually get asked a lot, obviously, because he was so, he lives so large in so many people's hearts and souls. I guess that's one of the great blessings of my life, is that I not only was allowed to grow up under his tutelage and have the greatest mentor in this business. I mean, Norman Lear was fantastic, but Michael actually made us as kids, or made me, not necessarily everybody else, but I had to learn everybody's job on the set. And I had to shadow them. I had to shadow the greensmen, craft services, the gaffers, the grips, the electricians. I had to learn to trim an arc. That was back in the days when we had arc lights. I had to spend a day with the transpo department. I had to spend a day with the wranglers, because he wanted all of us, but me in particular, to know that no one of us was more important than the other, and that if you take any one of us away, it all falls apart. It was a very egalitarian set. Nobody had trailers. We all had a room on the honey wagon, Michael included. The only times there were ever trailers on our set, Winnebagos, was for Patricia Neal, who'd had a massive stroke years before and needed the rest, and Marriott Hartley, who was breastfeeding a newborn child. But nobody else had that. And it was, he was insistent that we respect everyone else around us and not feel that we were the end-all be-all. And then on the other side of all of it, all of the responsibility and the work that he did, how he did that, we would shoot all day, then he would go home and he would write all night. And then he would go in and cast, and he directed and he produced, and he actually owned the company that we rented the equipment from, too. He was one of the funniest people I will ever have known in my lifetime. We spent most of the time on our set laughing really hard. And I would say 95% of that was Michael. He was a prankster. I was his absolute, that was another thing he mentored. I was also his co-conspirator. I was the one he actually got to do most of the dirty work for him. And gleefully and joyfully I did. And he was a second father to me. My youngest son is named Michael.
Yeah.
So I think that pretty much says it all.
Okay, I think it was left side, but I will get back to the right. Anyone on the left have a question? Oh, okay, sir, yes.
Yeah, just for everybody there. I would like each of you to name an actor that you have not worked with but would like to have.
Oh. Oh, I'll go first. I
wants
have
to know?
one. I know one right away. Maggie Smith.